The first time you heard about COVID, how far did you think this would all go? Well, when I packed up my work PC so I could work from home, I told someone on the way out that I'd see them in a month or so. How incredibly naive. I didn't think it was going to be that bad. While packing up my stuff and carting it out to work from home, my boss catches me in the hallway looking a bit panicked. "I dunno man," he laments. "This sounds a lot worse than originally thought." After a heavy sigh and uncomfortable silence, he lays out his apocalyptic premonition. "This is something that we might end up dealing with for 1, maybe even 2 whole months." I didn't pay attention to it until they started shutting shit down. 2 weeks. Didn't even take my succulents home. They are now very dead, I'm sure. Pensive face. I thought we would be in for a long 2 to 3 month strict lockdown. Instead we played the hot-cold game for over a year. I heard about it December 2019, January 2020. There were photos people got by hacking CCTV cameras in China of people getting welded into their apartments, bodies being hauled off, and people being forcibly quarantined. There were GPS photos of mass burial sites and mass cremations. TBH, I thought it would be worse. It was still bad, but I thought it was going to be a Black Death-level pandemic that would have killed off a quarter of the population. About as long as Ebola back in 2014. Heard about it December 2019. I honestly did think it would reach a global scale, since the H1N1 pandemic did hit my country a decade earlier. We shut down for a day or two. But honestly, I didn't ponder on how much it would take for it to come and go. I would have never imagined it would stay this long, or disrupt life as it has, or take away so many people. Nor divide country populations so much. As soon as my husband heard of a case in New York, we live in a very small town in the Midwest, he told his grandma to stay away from groups of people and to have us run her errands. I'm the one who overreacts, so when he was that serious I knew it wasn't good. We both knew once it was passed on from China it was bad. It didn't take me long to realize just how many people are selfish assholes. I was scared out of my mind. I was living alone, stationed 800 miles from my husband, and 30 weeks pregnant. The military had put a stop movement order so I couldn't move to be with him. No family, no friends in the area, no support. I was really scared about delivering alone, raising a newborn by myself, and generally being afraid of others to hurt my baby unintentionally with their germs. I stocked up on canned food, water, and books to make sure if it got worse, I could stay home with the baby and not have to go anywhere for a long time. Update. I had no gender reveal, no baby shower, and I did give birth alone, and raised my baby for 6 weeks by myself until I could reunite with my husband in June of 2020. All in all, it was traumatizing, but mostly because I was pregnant. First, yeah, I thought it was another bird flu, SARS, MERS scare story. Then it appeared like crazy in Italy. Within weeks, it was obvious there was a significant amount of asymptomatic infectious transmissions. There was real data from Italy, showing 80% of the town was infected asymptomatically. And then, nothing happened. No closing the borders, no quarantine, no testing of any but the most ill people, no masks or gowns, and in fact even no recommendation for ordinary citizens to wear a mask, because there weren't enough for healthcare workers. It was pretty obvious by then, we're either all going to die this year, or else this is going to become endemic, changing civilization forever. In mid-January, when China was pulling people with fevers off the street and starting construction of enormous temporary hospitals, it was pretty obvious it was getting out and was really bad. I was reading everything about what treatments worked in China and they had identified the anti-inflammatory drugs by mid-March and I was trying to buy them. I saw literally nothing about those drugs on the news in the US until summer when a doctor was crying about how unfair it was he got them and lived when most others couldn't. Thought it would be like the last bird flu outbreak a few years earlier. I thought a common enemy would pull the world more together. I thought it would bring good and positive change to the whole world. But now I am not sure if this happened or just the mere opposite. I remember reading about it in the news in late January or early February. I am always kind of a sucker for doomsday virus scenario, so I followed it with morbid interest in the beginning. A few weeks into February, I was seeing reports of how far and wide it was spreading throughout the world. It still wasn't getting more than a passing mention in the US news. But places it was hitting were reporting on it quite a bit more. I remember talking to coworkers and some of them hadn't even heard of it or just from the 30-second blip in the nightly news. As I started to see more and more reports about how quickly it was spreading, I started to get a bit more concerned. People I worked with, family members, y'all folks online, some were concerned about it, other people not so much. Slowly, very slowly, I started to stock up on little things when I went out to do some shopping. I don't like to stock up on things normally, because I live in a very small house, and don't have much storage. Some canned goods here, boxed food, TP, paper towels, frozen meat, cases and gallons of water. Then about a week before the official lockdown was announced for my state, I went to a bulk food store, and filled that cart with just about everything I thought I would need for a little while. Pretty much all of the things I mentioned, just much more of it. I felt a little crazy, but I thought, there isn't any harm in it. This stuff will keep for a long time, so eventually I will eat it. Lockdown was announced a few days later, and I was relieved? Maybe not the right word, but the store shelves in my town went bare in like 24 hours. People went fucking nuts. I had tried to tell a few of them that I was very concerned with how the US was treating it versus the rest of the world, and few paid me lip service, but most did nothing. Over the next few months, I honestly figured it would never end. Not with the selfishness and pettiness that I was seeing in the news, from our leadership, and from the people in my own town. It was super disheartening to see, even as the numbers climbed, how people were still denying it, fighting back against the smallest things, fighting each other and denying science. To this day, I don't think it will ever end. There will be those who put themselves above all others, and people who will, on their deathbed, deny anything is wrong. They will actively fight against their own well-being, and that of their family, all in the name of personal freedom. I never got sick, but I did buy a Nintendo Switch, and built a new computer, with graphics card. Those first few weeks while everyone else was still trying to find TP, eggs, milk and bread. So, I suppose I won? I wasn't worried too badly until we got directives to start masking at work and we shut our doors to the outside world. I thought it would last a week or two. Hard lockdown for a little while would suck, but we would get through it. Things changed day by day. First, stay home if you feel sick at all. Wear a mask while in the building. Then you can work as long as you don't have a cough and fever, but wear an N95 at all times, but ignore the normal use protocols you can wear it room to room. It was hard to keep up, but we did our best. Then we started to watch with growing horror as it spread through the US and cases kept closer and closer. And the PPE shortage warnings started arriving. Don't throw your mask away, you have to reuse it. Use gloves sparingly. We can't get more. It was like living through an apocalyptic movie. Everyone that coughed was eyed with suspicion and fear. Can't let the virus in our facility. 1 year later and I am traumatized. I don't think I have fully processed my trauma yet. The agony of watching someone gasp for breath as you try desperately to stabilize them and keep them off a vent because you know they are too old and won't make it off. Weekly, sometimes twice weekly testing and waiting to hear if the COVID ward grows. Months behind plastic barriers with little supplies and exhaustion. Overworked, understaffed and direly short of PPE. I caught it when my overused N95 broke in a patient's room as I pounded on their chest to try to bring them back. Spoiler alert. I failed. Over and over I failed and watched my patients carted out in body bags. Held iPads so tearful families could say goodbye because we couldn't let anyone in. Held hands as patients I had cared for years took their last breaths. I had the funeral home's number memorized, but I couldn't tell you the date, or the last time I ate. The dichotomy of work world and outside world was beyond insane, into gaslighting. Watching as the leader of our country downplayed what I battled every day. Past people in stores refusing to mask while I left every shift and stripped on my porch to try to keep my family safe. Listened to deniers claim it was a hoax, screaming about the survival rate and it wasn't worth sacrificing their right to a haircut or go to a bar. While I went to bed praying that the patient I left in bad shape the day before pulled through. It was maddening. I had and still have nightmares of cold blue alarms. I can no longer watch medical shows because the sound of alarms and code blues send me into nauseated crying cold sweat-filled panic attacks. I left my job bedside and moved to ambulatory care due to extreme PTSD. I couldn't lose another patient. It would break me. I sobbed the day I got my first COVID vaccine. I cried so hard I couldn't breathe. I felt like that shot in my arm was the first truly deep breath I had taken in a year. It was hope. And now a year later, as more get vaccinated and humans start to win against the virus, it's a glimpse at the sun returning after the worst storm I have ever weathered. Part of me really believed governments would be quick with action and it would die down quick. It was really shocking to me that they let people travel without any restrictions for so long. Still, my country has hardly had any proper lockdown. So many people have never done anything to stop the virus. Many offices never closed. And there are so many victims. Long COVID is starting to become a real problem alongside COVID patients. I thought we would all do more to save lives. Maybe I've read too many stories of the heroism of my country during WW2. I thought we could be a little bit like them. Pretty naive, huh? I thought it would just stay in China. Like Ebola and all the other stuff that never made it here. But you hear about it all the time on the news. I thought it would have ended up being like Ebola, SARS, or Zika. Bad for the people and places that had it, but not something that would end up causing anything world-changing. Once the NBA shut down, that when I began to think it was legit, and once my university canceled in-person classes after spring break, it really hit me how bad this might end up being. Believe it or not, I had a pretty good suspicion it wasn't going away quickly. A coworker told me she was scared of it when the news first started covering it in Wuhan. I told her not to worry, that these things happen once every few years. China will contain it. When I first heard about it, I thought, this is it, after years planning for a pandemic. You remember, the swine flu, bird flu, and so forth. However, I figured it would pan out like the rest, but I did have that thought. Fast forward to when they canceled sports. I got a text saying, they just canceled sports. I asked which ones, and she said, all of them. That's when I told my folks to take their laptops home, and we haven't been back to the office since. I work in Swiss as a ski instructor. Of course, we have people from all around the world. One guy actually comes from Wuhan area. He was showing me a map of where the virus has been spreading in the area. Big red circles, places going into lockdown and such. We joked about it. Jesus Christ. I figured a couple of weeks. But my real question is, if everything were handled perfectly both by the government and citizens, how long would it last? I mean, if everyone truly agreed to just hunker down in their homes and not leave for a month, and people in hazmat suits delivered the whole country world groceries, would it have only lasted a month? First time? A joke? Yeah, okay, the Wuhan flu, big deal. When reports were coming out from China of welding apartment buildings shut and silencing reporters. I spent 100 on canned veggies, rice and beans. This is the exact moment I knew it'd be no joke. Wife said I was a lunatic. We locked down few weeks later and I felt pretty damn good about that choice. I was casually listening to a Stephen King's audiobook about a pandemic when I came across the news in the internet. It felt weird, like a bad omen. I was actually at my sober house when things started shutting down. I remember being so angry because our weekly trip out was cancelled. Lol. To be fair, we were stuck in our sober house except to grocery shop or go to meetings, so it was boring. No one took it seriously. We all, though it was an overreaction, that it would only be a few months. We were all pissed because we had to shut down the second house and keep it clean in case someone got sick, so we all had to room with each other. Previously we all had our own separate room and there was a whole other house. I went from despising my mask to not wanting to take it off. Woman shrugging, medium light skin tone. I was following the news coming from China closely through February to March. I've played a lot of Plague Inc. in my time, and I had a bad feeling that coronavirus was going to be a global problem. Already kind of being a germaphobe, I quietly prepared by gathering antibac soap and hand sanitizer, and had a small collection of disposable masks ready. My coworkers and friends laughed in my face until about the second week of March. Then no one was laughing. I would have liked to have been wrong. Sad face. The first morning of lockdown in my area of DFW, I went for a walk and marveled at the deserted streets during what would normally be rush hour. I was pretty impressed at how seriously people seemed to be taking the situation, and I thought that maybe we had a good shot at severely slowing the spread of the virus, as long as everybody did their part for a few weeks. Then, right in front of me, on an almost totally empty major thoroughfare, I saw the only 3 cars on the road get into a 3-car accident. Then I remembered how stupid everybody is. A friend of a friend is a professor of public health. He said, "This is the one," back in January 2020. I thought that COVID would end in China. I accidentally took a 40-minute pocket video on my phone on February 20, 20 when I was trying to take a picture of the sunset at the beach. One guy we were talking to said, "What do you guys think about this coronavirus?" We were all joking about it like it was some massive overreaction. I never thought I'd be where I am today due to COVID. Sadly, I just finished watching The Last Man on Earth, and I thought, wow, this could be it. I didn't change my habits or hoard anything. After a couple weeks passed, I was more upset that I couldn't buy TP, and that people overreacted with the hoarding. I got texts from a friend in China in January 2020. Some quotes. "A lot of people are waiting to die. It's like a zombie land. Wuhan got blocked by the army, it's still sprinting. It was pretty chilling. I'm not an intelligence gathering agency. I'm just a guy that knows someone who occasionally travels to China. I'm hard-pressed to believe that the US government didn't know about this until January. More to the point of the op, I thought it would run the way a lot of public health emergencies have in the past. Public health officials would announce the problem. Asked what the worst case is by journalists, they'd give a worst-case scenario that was pretty scary, and methods to prevent that worst case. People would complain, but mostly follow directions. Afterwards, they'd complain about having to do whatever it was to prevent it, because the worst case never happened. Things I never thought. The CDC could be so easily disconnected from science. That the CDC would initially fuck up a PCR test so badly. That testing would be politicized. That no one would think to start up the producers of the reagents needed to do PCR tests. Ditto PPE. That no one had given thought to the scalability of disposable PPE during an actual pandemic. Thanks for watching. See you later.